So this is my presentation on greenwashing and government regulation. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So environmental regulation, as we know, has its limits. So something like the Clean Air Act is limited to like what the EPA, legislation is in Congress. So it's not the end all be all to mitigating pollution. However, it does influence the protection of the environment. And we can see this through something like this graph, which shows the decline of criteria pollutants since the Clean Air Act has been in place. So as you can see, it's a very negative slope. Another successful regulation was the Montreal Protocol, which placed regulations on CFCs, I'm not going to say the word because it's too hard to pronounce, and ODs, and the goal was to have a 50% reduction in the consumption of these pollutants, and this was achieved. We have, ever since that happened, ever since the law was put into place, there's been a steady decline, and this was in Australia, which is where the problem was the biggest at the time. And so as we can see, government intervention can be successful in reducing pollutants. And so something that should be regulated that I wanted to explore was greenwashing, which is the term used to describe marketing tactics used by big name fast fashion companies to advertise their new supposed sustainable lines of clothing. Same sort of thing with another false impression of providing misleading information about how a company's products are more environmentally sound. And this is opposite of green marketing. Green marketing is like the genuine production of sustainable products like a biodegradable sponge or reusable makeup wipes, something like that. And so the motivation to greenwash for companies to profit off the green brand, gain consumer trust, and gain stakeholder trust. But in fact, it can actually decrease equity, introduce consumer skepticism, and tarnish the green brand. And so since there are levels to greenwashing, I was kind of interested in seeing how those affected consumer opinion of the brand. So these are the conditions that were set up in this study, just to see how that affects, how a partial truth of environmental sustainability in their products contributes to the overall perception of the company. And the same thing came up where results showed that the only true green behavior will have a positive effect on the reputation of a company. And the next study that I looked at was the effectiveness of government punishment versus government tax subsidy on regulating greenwash. And the study that I looked at accounted for heterogeneity, meaning there was two potential enterprises set up. Enterprise A had more knowledge on the green brand, and Enterprise B had less knowledge on the green brand. The first game model was a game model using government punishment, and these were the cases that they went through, and they basically found that case 3, which was that Enterprise A and Enterprise B would both choose green innovation instead of greenwashing, was in line with the model, which was the assumption that government punishment would curb greenwashing, and they used these matrices to find that solution, something that I can't really explain. And the next model was tax subsidy and how that affected curbed greenwashing. And in case 3, again, they found that both Enterprise A and Enterprise B would opt for the green innovation strategy. However, because the cost of green innovation is higher than the cost of ordinary production activities, the government would need to invoke higher financial pressure on the companies to achieve the high enough coefficient for the tax subsidy to work. So that's just kind of a condition that the previous model didn't have to rely on. And because of that, it sort of reveals government punishment to be a more effective measure than tax subsidy on companies. And the conclusion from that is government tax subsidy is less effective because companies still have more to gain economically for continuing business as usual with that model, and then the government punishment allows that to not be variable at all. And it's important to have third parties monitor environmental reporting, not have internal reporting because there could be bias. And this could look like a multi-stakeholder overseas system conducted of the government, society, and the public to sort of regulate the greenwashing of the company and reporting of the company. And then the other conclusion is that green practice is the only effective way to solve the disparity between economic growth and environmental sustainability. And then China's greenwashing list serves as an example for ways to punish companies for greenwashing strategy. That's just that was expanded to a global scale where there was this list of all the companies that greenwashed, and as sort of a public shaming, that would be a good strategy to sort of like curb greenwashing and encourage green innovation instead.